know how it seems to you, but sometimes it feels like Steven Moffat is resting his balls on my face.
If you could just credit that quote to me, because I'm in charge of the show.
Hello, TARDIS people, miscreants, deviants, come one, come all. It's another Doctor Who Christmassy thing. But before we get into it, and before I address Stephen directly, without him being present, recently I was blessed to be granted by his publicist a short 8-minute interview, online only, of course, never in person, not within 6 feet of him, but an 8-minute interview in person to discuss the Christmas special and his contribution to Doctor Who generally. So I'm going to show that to you now, ahead of my review of Joy to the World. I hope you enjoy it, though frankly, it's of no consequence whether you do or don't. Here we go. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for agreeing to do this interview.
Hello.
I suppose my first question would be, why have you done this?
At least on Christmas Day, I will watch it go out live. Because we've got friends coming around and they watch the show, so I always have to try and stay awake during it. It looks bad if I fall asleep.
Do you ever feel as if really, your primary method, which is to collect ideas from your DVD collection and remix them into a sort of inferior pastiche, is just a sort of insult to the audience in some respects, and that they'd much prefer a sort of original piece of drama, something memorable, something that only drew attention to itself, rather than pointed to lots of other bits of famous iconography.
Yeah, it's tough now. Yes, everybody watches later.
Yeah,
really, a lot of people. I don't.
enough,
At least
though,
on
right?
Christmas Day, I will watch it go out live. Because we've got friends coming around
Bit
and they watch the
vain,
show,
isn't
so I
it?
always have to try and stay awake during it. It looks bad if I fall asleep.
Often I've fallen asleep, but I'm watching alone, so no one really cares. Do you feel like your scripts would benefit from being put in front of a discerning audience, perhaps a lecture theatre full of Doctor Who fans with IQ certified over, I don't know, 120, something like that?
I finish a script and give it to my wife to read. She will just go as far away from me as possible in case I stand over her and say,
He's
"You
a good
laughed here.
judge.
If you laugh, tell me what page you're on." So no, I don't do that. I mean, obviously, I'm very, very interested, and I'm trying to be aware of where people are getting bored or restive, or where people are getting excited, where they're laughing or where they're jumping. But I try not to make that obvious.
Some would say that the idea of doing, a Doctor Who Christmas special is incredibly reductive and silly, particularly with a show that can be said in any time, any place. The idea the Doctor's got such an overarching view of the universe and of all cultures and everything, that the idea that Christmas is significant to him in any way at all would be kind of silly. And that if you say Christmas special, it kind of puts a constraint on the imagination that engenders a set of cliches, repetitions, all the usual shit. With all of that in mind, what did you think about when you're putting together previous Christmas specials? What was your thought pattern?
I already knew what I wanted to do. I had thought of it years ago. I wanted to do a Christmas Carol and just call it a Christmas Carol.
That's original, yes.
And use time travel and the Doctor
Yeah.
for the ghosts. I knew I
Yeah.
wanted to do that, so
Well,
I
great
was
conceit.
well set up for that one. I mean, I never really thought about it. I mean, bizarrely
No.
enough, I didn't really think about it that year all that much. Because you've got this amazing job, this job of a lifetime, and you've really just got to concentrate on that.
Yes.
And how lucky you are to be there, even if you only last
You're
for
fucking
1 year.
lucky.
I mean, sometimes I'd be aware of the pressure. I was probably more aware of the pressure around Day of the Doctor, and I was aware of the pressure around writing the 11th Hour, because that was the make or break one. Can it survive without David and Russell? That was. I mean, the first Christmas one
sure could.
Do you know? I think I thought I had a handle on that.
Okay, but what would you say to people who say it'd be really nice to have a Christmas special of some consequence, something that was so steeped in Doctor Who lore and mythology that it would be essential viewing rather than sort of this flick off the wrist, throwaway entertainment that it always is.
I think, the Church on Ruby Road was a rare example of being able to say, we can just introduce him to a new audience and not worry about all the lore.
Forget about...
because it's not involved in this one. So that's a good jumping on point, the Church on Ruby Road. You'd always want Christmas to be that, but it's very often can't be. Sometimes you're killing a children's favourite on Christmas Day.
And, is it all right doing it for Russell? I mean, normally he'd be in charge, but this time, you're doing it for him. I suppose his stuff's all inconsequential too, so he didn't really have any instructions for you other than just sort of do your usual thing, raid the VHS cupboard and see what you can dig up.
It was fine. I mean, it doesn't, maybe not as strange as it perhaps should have been. I don't
really, you didn't mind
Ordan Boone as the ex-showrunner. They kind of. I come in and exec for a while I'm doing that. So
what does that mean?
To make the blow less strange. But the truth is, I remember those days back when I was writing for Russell and Julie and Phil back in the day, for David and for Chris. I remember that. So it's like slotting back into that job. So it wasn't too bad.
Really?
No, it was lovely. It was completely lovely. Had it been a completely new team, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Right. And do you think, maybe it's time for somebody else to come along, like an actual dramatist, and try Doctor Who?
He finds it really very hard.
Yes.
To persuade himself to let go and let them go on with it.
Okay. And if you could sum this episode up in, I don't know, 3 words or something, what would you say?
Well, how about Sat-Nav, Caesar, and Blush, which I believe have never appeared in the same sentence in all of human history. So,
okay, I doesn't make any sense, but then I don't suppose it needs to.
Here we are.
Well, I'd like to thank you for doing this for us at Christmas time, and we'll certainly be watching it, whatever it is.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Bye. Well, holy shit, Stephen, what can I say? I mean, on the surface, it looked like Joy to the World was just going to be a sort of lazy pun. The Crystal Maze meets Fawlty Towers. For much of it's extremely pleasurable running time, I suppose that's all it was, really. But at the end, at the close, something extraordinary happened. And I know you've got a wonderful, sense of humour and so on. And I did appreciate the joke, as an atheist and all the rest of it. But I did wonder, I couldn't help but wonder, what remains of Christian Britain made of their founding myth being reconstituted and overwritten by you for them on Christmas Day. They tune into Doctor Who, innocently, unawares, only to learn that you've reinvented the Christmas story, and instead of the divine, the God Almighty, putting a star in the sky to guide the shepherds to Bethlehem, and Christ, or Brian, or whatever his name was, we discover it was in fact Nicola coughing, Nicola cough mixture, the girl from Derry Girls, who'd ingested a star made by an evil weapons manufacturer that had sort of developed over many millions of years through a time hotel, which had effectively expedited its development to the point that it was a usable weapon. But she'd gone back into the future, or to the cosmos, or the past to make it safe. She ingested it to make it safe somehow, and anyway, she became God or something. I don't know. It's really hard to fully ingest these things yourself after a few glasses of mulled wine, and I'm on my fifth. So, the shepherds were guided to Bethlehem by a woman called Joy who'd swallowed a star. I mean, I suppose that's no more ridiculous than the original version, but I would have liked to see a little more bravery. I would have liked to have seen you, for example, maybe, I don't know, rewrite the founding myths of Islam and put that out in a Doctor Who Christmas special. That'd have been interesting, wouldn't it? Dear BBC, Steven Moffat seems to have completely rewritten the Quran. Still, one questions whether it's in good taste. It seems to be a little bit of a provocation to those followers of the great theisms. Well, it's ballsy, and it could only happen, I suppose, in a country like ours, where we can want it both ways. We want all the stuff that goes with Christmas. We want that special feeling. We want that magic. We want that slight metaphysical, supernatural element to proceedings. Call it what you will. But at the same time, we're going to laugh at the old version and replace it with something else in a bid to achieve the same effect. Is that hypocrisy? One could see it as hypocrisy. I don't want to go on too much about this because it sounds like I'm an apologist for Christianity. I'm certainly not. But I just couldn't think of another instance of a program that went out on Christmas Day for a mass audience that sort of fundamentally overwrote or undid Christmas. Maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, think what the BBC puts out on Christmas Day, generally speaking, EastEnders is about marital affairs and working class criminality. You've got, in the past, we used to have Only Fools and Horses, which sort of celebrated petty theft. the black market economy. And that wasn't very Christmassy, was it? Really encapsulate the spirit of Christmas. So maybe this doesn't matter. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. You know, the audience will decide. The thing about it is, Stephen, I actually enjoyed this episode. I thought you'd written a pretty good-natured and fun story. Okay, it was a little overwrought in terms of the sentimentality. The score, as usual, was about as subtle as your ball's been dropped into a vice.
If you could just credit that quote to me, because I'm in charge of the show.
But that said, there are some good jokes here. I like the Doctor being handed a plunger when he worked in the Sandringham Hotel and saying, you know, is this thing armed? It's a good joke. I like that. I liked his year with Anita in the hotel. I thought that was quite nice and touching, an example of that thing that you tended to do very well during your own run, which is use the time travel element of Doctor Who very well and to good comic effect, and also to achieve a little bit of pathos. I like that. I generally enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting, a fun concept, light, that just happened to overwrite the entire, New Testament. But, fine. That's a comic juxtaposition that I can enjoy in some respects. Something so profound smuggled into something so inconsequential. Because it was one of your scripts and not one of Roussel's, it was wittier than we've become accustomed to of late. You did pile on the sentimentality at the end. That's a very RTD-esque thing to do, I suppose. You have to keep the boss sweet. But generally speaking, this was a better episode of Doctor Who than we would usually get with the other guy.
What?
Look, I like the fact that this is still a surreal show, still, when you're writing it at least, a fairly witty show. It's the only show on TV where you can see T-Rex swallow a star. Sadly, that's not a euphemism, not a joke about Mark Bolan sucking off David Bowie or anything like that. Literally what happened on screen. But I don't go back on what I said before. I think in order for Doctor Who to survive in the future, it still needs to be more substantial. Still needs to be more meat on the bones. There's only so long you can get away with this sort of conceptual masturbation with a few gags sprinkled on the top. It works. It gets you through an hour on Christmas Day with a family audience. But in the long term, it's a formula for disinterest and disengagement, and ultimately cancellation. You need to appeal, all of you involved in Doctor Who, to a more serious, more discerning sci-fi fan base, not just, Julie's nan and Dave's aunt. So I leave you with that thought. But it wasn't a bad episode. It just didn't mean anything. And in the grand scheme of things, it will be forgotten. It's not an hour of Doctor Who that matters. But I suppose a Christmas special can only do so much. So, that's it really. I'm going to go now and have another glass of mulled wine. And I suppose we'll all return for the series of Doctor Who that was trailed when this episode was over. It looks I don't know, expensive. But will it be any good? Time will tell. Till next time.